So the first thing we have to talk about here is, what is economic freedom? And why should we care? And economic freedom exists when you have the ability. I think that the best way to tell this is in stories. So it's a society where people can wake up and decide that they want to do something with their lives, and they're largely unencumbered in doing that. So if you decide that you want to open a food truck, and if frankly that's what God has called you to do, then it's your job to do it with excellence. Economic freedom exists when we have the ability to do these things without an overly burdensome regulatory state, without such a cumbersome taxation or licensing process that makes it very difficult, especially for the poor, to be able to engage in these opportunities. So when we see a society that has a high degree of economic freedom, we want to think about that as an opportunity society. There's lots of opportunities for flourishing. There's lots of opportunities to create capital. There's lots of opportunities to make our lives better and longer and more fulfilling, to care for our children, to care for our family, to care for our communities, to care for the poor. That's what it looks like to have a lot of economic freedom. Economic freedom is empirically measured by economists. There's a variety of organizations that do this. And the Economic Freedom of the World report comes out all the time, and it's measuring annually how countries compare to one another. And so economic freedom for us is a way to understand how we're stewarding our scarce resources. It's kind of a macro look at how one country is doing relative to another. And by the way, there's other indices that compare economic freedom among states in the United States. So you can look at it a lot of different ways. But it's a society where we have privately protected property. We have a rule of law. And so people can make decisions as God is calling them to make decisions, because only we know what's best for us. That's between us and God. The federal government doesn't know what's best for you to do with your life. And so we are better able to live out our calling when we live in a society that has high degrees of economic freedom. Why should Christians care? We should care because, and this is a favorite quote of mine from Abraham Kuyper, a theologian who said, "There's not a square inch in the whole domain of our human existence over which Christ, who is sovereign over all, does not cry, 'Mine.'" And what that means is that all truth is God's truth. And that includes economic realities. Those are God's truths. It is incumbent upon us to be educated about them and to understand them. So economic realities are not ideological. They are realities. Think of gravity as a parallel example. If you walk up to the top of this building and get on the roof and step 1 foot off, what's going to happen? You're going to fall. You may not like gravity. It may inconvenience you, right? We'd all be better off if we didn't have to deal with gravity. We could just fly anywhere we wanted to go. But gravity makes that difficult. So we have to overcome gravity, but we have to be aware of it. And if we're not, it's at our peril. And the same thing applies for economic truths. And so these truths are God's truths. And so again, as Christians, we don't have the luxury of ignoring them or not being aware of them. It's our responsibility to do so.